What's up, guys? It's Coach Gaglione here. This is another edition of the Powerlifting for the People podcast. I'm your host, Coach Gaglione. If this is your first time stopping by, I've been involved with powerlifting and strength coaching for over 14 years. And today we're kind of continuing on our series about getting ready for a powerlifting competition and hosting a powerlifting competition as we are gearing up for our first sanctioned RPS meet. We've done many meets. We've gone through a couple different federations. And today I want to talk about what kind of the day is going to look like and what we're going to aim for. And this is going to be an educational process both for people running the event and people competing the event. So I want to kind of go over like a scenario. We're going to kind of use the amount of lifters in this upcoming RPS competition on March 14th as an example. We want to try to use this as a model moving forward. And if you're a first-time lifter, this will kind of help prepare you for the pacing of the meet and what we kind of aim to do. Obviously, there's going to be extenuating circumstances, and we can't completely foresee the future, but this is kind of going to be a general outline of how the pacing should go. We'll help you kind of prepare how your warm-ups are going to look, when you're going to eat and things like that, so you can have a better performance, and also so the kind of spotters, judges, and loaders, and everyone helping out the event kind of knows what the pacing should look like. So for our particular contest that we're running, we're going to do our rules briefing at 8:45 a.m., and that's going to be 15 minutes before we're going to kind of start the warm-up time, and then the goal is to have flight one, the actual first squat kind of kick off at 9:30 a.m. I'm kind of undecided if I want to kind of do some special kind of opening ceremonies and things like that, but regardless, we were going to have 9:30 a.m. start time, and we'll probably continue to use that time moving forward. Right now, we have a little bit over 40 lifters. I'm going to assume at our facility, we're never going to do more than 45 lifters. In the future, maybe we might do meets that are less as well. But in general, we're going to cap our meets at 45 for our facility in its current capacity. And for a 45 lifter meet, we're generally going to do 3 flights of 15 lifters. That's a nice kind of even number, kind of gives people a nice amount of rest, and it also allows us to have somewhere between 7 to 8 lifters per warm-up rack or per warm-up monolift per bench. So for people that are helping out in the warm-up room, we're going to be mindful to organize and have assigned racks for you guys. That way the warm-ups run a little bit smoother, even in a tight quarter. So each rack, we're going to have 2 warm-up stations for each flight. So you'll have the opportunity to have 7 to 8 people per rack at most. It'll probably be less in certain situations since we have some bench and deadlift only as well. And that's what it's going to look like. So I'm going to use myself as an example, and you don't have to, it's just to kind of give some of the newer lifters some ideas. We will have some people helping out in the back with warm-ups. But again, I'm going to use myself as an example. If I was doing this meet, how I would do it. Basically, the way the warm-ups will work. So if you're in a 3-flight meet, if you're in a 3rd flight, for example, you should not be warming up when the first flight is warming up. You should not be warming up when the second flight is warming up. You should be warming up when the second flight is up, actually on the stage. So we had to make sure that the right people are warming up at the right times. Okay. Again, so if you're in the 3rd flight, you should be warming up when the second flight is going on the platform. If you're in the 2nd flight, you should be warming up when if you're in the 2nd flight, you should be warming up when the first flight is on the platform. The first flight is a little trickier. Basically, you will have to start warming up as soon as rules is over, and you will also be warming up during the breaks, during the platform changes, which when we go through the actual schedule, that'll make more sense in a second. So first flight is you have to be a little bit more on your toes. That's, I guess, one advantage of being stronger is having a little bit more time to see the flow of the meet. So if you're in the first flight, you got to be a little bit more on your toes. You might need to warm up a little bit quicker and kind of pay attention to the start times for the platform change. For our platform changes, we're going to aim for 15 to 20-minute breaks. Since it's a monolift meet, it's going to take a little bit more time to break down. So we're going to try for 15. It may extend to 20, but we're looking for a 15-minute break between squat and bench for a platform change, and a 15-minute break between bench and deadlift. You're probably going to have time. Generally, I like to have my lifters do 5 or 6 warm-ups in the back room. That gives you enough time. And generally, Generally, like I said, you're going to be able to kind of do a warm-up every like 5 or 6 minutes or so, and that'll be good. Sometimes I like to do my first couple of warm-ups kind of in a row or in succession, and then I'll slow down and take longer breaks for my last couple of warm-ups, especially for my last warm-up. So I wanted to kind of use myself as an example if I was doing this meet. So assuming I was in, let's say I would be in the third flight because I'm a pretty good squatter. The last couple of meets I've opened up at 750, so I'm going to use that as a hypothetical example. So if I was warming up myself as an equipped lifter, I would take 1 plate and 2 plates back to back and just do a couple of reps there. And typically I would do singles after the first 2 sets. So my first quote-unquote set, I would take 1 plate and 2 plates back to back, and then I would let the next person go, wait a couple of minutes. Then I would take 3 and 4 plates back to back, and that would be in my briefs. Then I would start to only do 1 set at a time. I would do, so again, my first kind of round would be 1 and 2 plates. My second round would be 3 and 4 plates, and then I would slow things down. Do a single at 5 plates with my suit on, do a single at 6 plates with my suit on, and my 5th and final warm-up set would be 7 plates with wraps, having someone call my depth commands into a competition standard. I think that's really important. And then I would open up with, so my last warm-up would be about 695 with the 65-pound barbell. And my opener, I would hit my opening attempt at 750. For my bench example, I might do 1 plate, a plate and a quarter back to back. I might do 2 plates, adding a slingshot because my shoulder's been banged up. Then 2 plates and a quarter, 3 plates. I might put my shirt on, 3 plates and a quarter, and then I might open with like a 400-pound bench at this point. So that's kind of like how my last meet went. For the deadlift, I would just usually I'm a little bit more warmed up at that point, so I just take bigger jumps, and I would just go 1 plate and 2 plates. Then I might throw my briefs on, 3 plates, 4 plates, suit on, 5 plates with the suit on with my straps up, and then kind of go from there. I try to time my warm-up so I have about a flight's length of time. So if I'm like, say the 10th person in the flight, I try to go, when the 10th person is up in the flight before me, and then kind of time the warm-ups according that way. So we'll have some people to help coordinate that in the back room. So that's just an example to kind of help you out in terms of the warm-ups, in terms of when you should eat and things like that. So if I was in the third flight, I might eat during rules and hydrate during the rules, especially if you're an equipped lifter. You want to make sure that you are hydrated far enough in advance. You can go to the bathroom before you get your squat suit on. That's something to consider if you're an equipped lifter. So I might eat and drink during rules or a little bit before that. Then I would eat a little bit something as soon as I'm done with the squat. I would eat a little something and have maybe some caffeine if that's something you do after bench, and kind of get ready for the deadlift. Because it tends to be a long day. Once you get to the deadlifts, tend to be a little bit more tired. If you like to do a general warm-up before you get onto the bar, I recommend doing your general warm-up. Anything you need to do before you get onto the bar, I would do that a little bit before you need to start warming up. So if you were going to warm up during flight 2, for example, and if you're lifting in the third flight, you might want to do your general warm-up on the third attempts of flight 1. So that's just some advice for you guys. So now I want to kind of go through a hypothetical situation to kind of take you through a meet hypothetically. So again, we're going to use we're going to say you have about 45 lifters. So we're going to say it's 3 flights of 15 people. And I'm going to kind of go through the scenario. So like we could assume that you're in the third flight, but I'll kind of go through different scenarios. So again, at 8:45 a.m., it's going to be a rules briefing. So during the rules briefing, if you're a more experienced lifter, sometimes I might have my lifters start warming up already if I feel like it's going to be a quick turnaround. You don't want to be disrespectful, obviously, but you also want to make sure you're on time. So if you feel like you're going to be pressed for time and you're a more experienced lifter, now that being said, if you're a more experienced lifter, you're probably not in the first flight. So something to consider. We were going to try to keep our rules briefing to about 15 minutes, so that way you have 30 minutes to warm up for flight 1. Typically, flight 1 is going to be kind of not as strong people, more women and teenage lifters. So 30 minutes should be plenty of time for you to get ready. So at 9 a.m., flight 1 will start warming up. Again, these are all hypothetical times, assuming everything runs smoothly. There's no kind of, unforeseen events that happen and things like that kind of cause hiccups or inclement weather and things like that. So once flight 1 is on the platform at 9:30, that's when our meet start time is. Flight 2 should begin their warm-ups. Since there's 15 lifters, 3 attempts. It's going to take about 45 minutes. That's the fastest scenario. So we're going to assume an approximate start time for everything moving forward. So approximate start time for flight 2 would be 10:15. So flight 2 will be warming up at 9:30. You have about 45 minutes, and you'll have about time for five-ish warm-ups. And 10:15, flight 2 will begin. Flight 3 will start warming up at 10:15 at that approximate 10:15 time. At 11 a.m., flight 3 will begin squatting. This is where it gets a little bit tricky for flight 1. So we're going to have a break, so you need to kind of slow down. So if you're in flight 1, do not start warming up for bench for a little bit. I think a good rule of thumb would be to wait till like the third attempts for flight 3, and it might be around like 11:30 for flight 1 to start warming up for bench, for example. We'll have a projected start time of about 11:45 a.m. Because we'll have a 15 to 20 minute break for the platform change between squats and bench. From there, we're going to have a projected start time of about 12 p.m. for bench. We're going to try to hold these as good as we can. And so when flight 1 starts, flight 2 can begin warming up at 12, projected start time. At 12:45, we're going to have a projected bench flight 2 start time. At flight 3 could start warming up for bench. 1:30, projected start time for bench flight 3. So flight 1 should start warming up for deadlifts around 2 p.m. or so. At 2:15, we'll have that 2 to 2:15, we'll have that 15-minute break for a platform change. So again, 2 p.m. At 2:30, we're going to have a projected deadlift start time. So flight 1 should be ready by about 2:30. Flight 2 should start warming up at 2:30. At 3:15, projected start time for flight 2 deadlifts. Flight 3 should start warming up. At 4 o'clock will be a projected start time for flight 3 for deadlift. At that point, our helpers should start to be breaking down and cleaning up the area, make sure like the monolith and everything is kind of all tucked away, and the table should be starting to figure out all the awards for the lightweight women, the lightweight men, and the teenage lifters. And then at 4:45, between like 4:45 and 5 o'clock, we'll do our awards ceremony. I will do the award ceremony a little bit different. Again, at Gaglione Strength, we try to group people. We kind of separate people by raw and equipped. We will send in the results based on raw modern and raw classic and all the age divisions based on RPS standards and divisions. But we want to definitely encourage some more competition at the local level. So we tend to group some people together. We will have a best lifter by Wilkes formula as well. So we're going to separate you guys, like I said, a little bit differently to encourage some more competition. Because at the end of the day, I think that's important to have some friendly competition. We're going to do, I don't know where, maybe like a place like Croxley or something like that, still up in the air, but we want to try to have some kind of like informal, kind of social. Locally, there's a lot of great kind of restaurants and kind of, bars and grills, so to speak, in Farmingdale. So we'll have a projected kind of after party as well, which is optional, but I want to try to make some more social time for the lifters and, just have a good time. So that's going to be up in the air. So that's just kind of like some general guidelines. I hope that's helpful. It's all these timings are hypothetical, but the timing of your meet's going to be really important. We're going to have a lot of people in the back at Gaglione Strength to help you. Ideally, you have a coach or handler with you as well that can kind of manage the time for you, so you can just focus on executing. Couple of things to consider, like, again, is just when you eat and when you're kind of changing into your different equipment. If you have different equipment for squatting, for benching, for deadlift, be mindful of having that stuff ready to go. Have your food and water ready to go, and all that kind of stuff. Make sure all your equipment and stuff is ready. I would make sure your rack heights are also taken between 7:30 and 8:30 before the rules as well. We're going to take squat and bench heights. That way it's a little bit more organized with that as well. And that is basically it, guys. So that's just kind of like a rundown of the meet, the kind of how a meet's going to flow, when you should be warming up, how you should be warming up. Some other kind of things, like I said, you should just some quick reminders. You'll have somewhere between, 30. Generally, you're gonna have somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes to warm up for your lifts. Again, you're gonna do somewhere on the lower end, 4 to 5 warm-ups. You could potentially have time for 6 or 7 in a smaller meet situation, but in general, I think if you can get ready in 5 lifts, that's a really good place to start, and you'll have plenty of time, so you won't be rushing. You want to generally be within 5% or so of your opener. So if you're opening at like 90% of your max, your last warm-up around like 85% is a good idea. If you're 93%, you might want to take 87%. Whatever it is, just be within, a certain, and you want to kind of be within a similar jump, like whatever you plan on jumping from your first to second, it should be kind of like a similar jump from like your last warm-up to your opener, so your kind of body is used to those kind of jumps. So if you plan on taking smaller jumps, you might want to take a little bit heavier of a last warm-up. If you plan on taking bigger jumps, nothing wrong with going from bigger jumps from your last warm-up to opener. And in general, your opener should be something you could triple on any given day, something you could handle very handily, because again, you cannot go down, you can only go up. Second attempt, probably something you could double, or maybe around 95 to 97%. Third attempt, something you could handle. Maybe it's a new one or at max, maybe it's 100%, or whatever you can muster up that day with a good standard to put you in a position to win or put you in a position to hit a PR total, or just establish a total PR if you're a newer lifter. So I hope that is helpful. I want to try to prepare you guys the best we can. If you want some more resources for getting ready for your first competition, check out my book, Are You Ready to Compete? It's Are You Ready to Compete? You can search John Gaglione on Amazon. A lot of great resources there. If this podcast helped you, please give it a 5-star review. If someone's kind of not sure on like how to warm up or just not sure about like the flow of a meet, this might be a good listen. So even if you're not planning on competing in RPS, if you're doing like a USAPL meet or something like that, obviously there's a 2-hour weigh-in. There's some other different factors, but the general like layout will be the same. If it's a 2-flight meet, obviously it'll kind of most of the time. If you have a split session meet and it's only 2 flights, you might be done 1:30, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, that range. But in general, the flow is going to be pretty similar, and the breakdown time, the platform change time might be different. Some federations might only allow 5 to 10 minutes. We're going to allow 15 to 20 due to the monolift and then the space considerations for our gym. So thank you guys so much for listening. Check out the links below if you want to support the program. Thank you guys so much. And until next time, stay strong. We'll see you soon.